but I was a little late to the game. I didn't start till House of Wolves. So by the time King's Fall and everything dropped, I had almost caught up. And finally actually ran King's Fall 3 weeks ago.
Oh, how'd you like it?
It was fun. It was hard to find enough people and enough time. Ended up doing it in multiple steps over multiple days. But it was fun.
So, did you get any good loot?
Strangest loot drop ever from Oryx. I drew 2 hand cannons.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're, of course, terrible because the raid hand cannon is awful. But, I was very shocked to get 2 identical items out of the chest. At least they were both 307, so they were worth infusing into something.
I'm just typing out. No, God damn it. Okay, there we go. Typing out a message here. Sorry. All right. Yeah, I've gotten 1 hand cannon and immediately infused it into something else.
Yeah, at this point, I think I've done almost everything once, but very few things a lot of times. Still haven't run the old 2 raids because there really hasn't been a point.
Well, for me, the point for running the raids is we do have a lot of people that are just getting into it, and we have people who have never done raids because, like, they were on Xbox One, or not Xbox One, but 360, and they just never had the chance to actually raid with other people. So now they're getting that chance. And yes, Vault of Glass isn't quite as challenging, even on hard mode, as it used to be. But it's still fun, and it's still challenging enough. Like, one of my friends, Neriel, had, like I said, had never run any raid. So we took her through Vault of Glass, and we had a blast. It was great. And I know there are still other players like who have been like referred as friends because we did that whole mess, and they're getting to the point where very soon they'll be able to run Vault of Glass at least once. So that for me, it's and I still don't have a fucking Necrochasm from Crota. So like the exotic completionist in me still wants to do that. But okay, I'm curious. So when you did King's Fall. Did you? Oh well, I guess we can. We're past 9 o'clock. We can start the show. Hi, I'm Jonathan, and that's Mark over there.
Yep, that's me.
And we are Glib Shark, and tonight we have Mark, aka Dark54555, author, like celebrated author here, and he has a new book out called The Elf Bucket, and we'll get to that here in just a bit. But we're talking Destiny, just real quick, because I'm really curious about your opinion of King's Fall.
Okay.
So when you ran, especially the end part, the actual fight with Oryx, how did you feel the first time you ran that? Was it overwhelming? What sort of tell me about that run there?
So I guess maybe I had to start with how we got to the whole thing. At first I was like, I finally got light level like 295. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try and run the raid, try to find a pickup game because I'm on PS4 and you're on Xbox One, and I didn't really have many people on PS4 to go run it with. After trying for like a week, I finally gave up and went over to Reddit, to the Sherpas Reddit for Destiny, which is like people who volunteer to walk newbies through as much of the raid as they want to. And actually managed to luck out and find a guy running it the same day that I posted, and ran with that group all the way through, I guess, to the daughters.
Right.
And that took us about 4 hours with, there were, I guess, 2 totally new people, one guy who had done it once, and then a couple of veterans. And we went through and actually picked up like all the calcified fragments and everything along the way. So at the 4-hour mark, I had to call it a night because I had to go to bed and get up for work. So went back on Reddit to post and say, hey, if anybody wants to help me out, I'm at the daughters need more help. And so somebody else, who now actually the group that she introduced me to, I played with quite a bit, volunteered to jump on and from that checkpoint to see what we could do. Spent an hour and a half pulling in randoms from fire teams. Could not down the daughters, which was highly disappointing. So we gave up that night, moving on to the next night, because of course we're approaching reset. Got on with some of those folks and more randoms from fire teams. Did manage to down the daughters. Could not take down Oryx after about 8 tries, based on the couple of random guys we ended up with. Just didn't have enough firepower for us to consistently stagger Oryx during the fight. So yeah, it was a little frustrating, but nobody was holding it against those guys or anything. They thought they could do it, and was what it was. So by the time we got to the last night, which was the night before the reset, I was a little bit desperate, because it's like, well, if I don't get back to here, I don't know that I have the time to try and run through the whole thing again anytime soon. So the group we ended up with actually managed to take him down on like the 3rd try.
Nice.
It was a really good group. And it actually would have been the 2nd try, but our guy who had the aura ended up taking a couple steps too far and knocked everyone out of the bubble to get them killed.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So we ended up doing it. It was exciting. It wasn't really that overwhelming, because I had so many people who were, I had watched videos of what you were supposed to do for the fight, because you at least want to know the mechanic trying to go in. But then everybody was totally fine with it, even though most of the people I was running with had like Touch of Malice and a bunch of good 300 plus gear, and I'm the one sitting here with 295, and the best things I have are the things that had dropped earlier in the raid.
Yeah.
So it was fun, and it was actually was what has led me to this group of people on PS4 that's actually pretty reliable. If it's like, hey, I need a couple of people to try and go get the Black Spindle, or right now I'm still gathering materials for the exotic swords. So once I finish that, I'm going to need probably some help to go knock out all those knights in the Sunless Cell Strike.
Yeah, we actually, not right before the show, but before the show, I had helped a friend get her solar sword, the solar exotic sword. So here's what happened with that. So at first it was just her and I. And we were like, you know what? We're just going to go through. It should give us the same mission. And hopefully the rando that we pick up, because it does matchmake, is cognizant enough to see that we're keeping we're like quickly killing the other guys, and we're keeping the solar guy alive. And for those of you in the audience that aren't big into Destiny talk, too bad. So we go in, and this dude is a fucking potato. Like, he is just terrible. He's dying, but not like to the point where, okay, I guess I should say he wasn't fucking terrible. He was just bad. Like, he just died, and we started being able to call when he would die. Like, there was one point in the Sunless Cell where all the Shriekers, and so we blew up a Shrieker, and he's hiding behind this cover near the front, and we're just like, he's going to fucking die. Like, he is going to die right there. And earlier he had been running to try and make it through and just run through everyone, and just kept dying. So we finally get to the last guy, and we kill both the other 2 knights very quickly. And it's very obvious that we're keeping the last guy alive. So to this guy's very minimal credit, he also keeps that knight alive. And we're dancing around, and we're doing stuff, and we get the knight low enough, and we get the boss Alakul low enough, and we're like, all right, it's time to go. It's go time. So I whip out my sword, and I go in, and I kill the Solar Knight. And so I turn around, Alakul's there. I start trying to kill Alakul. Well, he kills me, and then he kills my partner. Our third stands away, like doesn't do anything, doesn't fire a round as far as we can see. Then finally gets us up, and by the time he bothered to come and revive us, it was too late. And if he had just been firing even just his primary, he probably would have succeeded. So I don't know which sword he was going for, but he didn't get it, and neither did Izzy. So we were just, it was really frustrating. Fortunately, around that time, we saw one of our friends pop online. So we grabbed him, ran through it. It was a little rough, but then we knocked it out. And then we went and played some salvage and all that stuff. But yes, we did the sword strike, and that was, I think that was her last sword. So she's got all of them. I've got all of them. And it really is something that I think we can say definitively, you need a group that's talking to each other. Absolutely, 100%.
So you can tell me if you think I'm crazy. I've actually got all 3 active at once and plan to try and do all 3 swords in one go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that's actually okay, because once you figure it out on your deal, then you'll know how to run it every single time. Like I had to run it on all 3 of my characters. And it was a different character each time. And what sucked was apparently the most powerful sword in Crucible, the bolt caster, was my last one. And that would have been really handy in some of the events where, like, I think Festival for the Lost, for the Crota Mask, you wanted to get sword kills. Well, guess which sword is really easy to get kills with? The one that fires a fucking projectile.
So I can claim at least one thing. I got all 25 of the sword kills you had to get, to get that part of the quest done during Iron Banner.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I got okay with the sword. I really liked blocking and then killing someone. That was one of my favorite things to do. Was just like someone would come with a shotgun, you go bam, and then you kill them. But maybe we should. There's one more. I guess the point with the whole like the Kingsfall talk was. So you watched videos going in. Did you feel like the mechanics were too overwhelming? Was it just right? How did you feel about the way the fight worked itself?
It was harder to put into practice than it was, compared to watching it or reading it. But once you've done it, at least tried it once or maybe twice, you really shouldn't need much more direction, which I think is probably about the right blend of difficulty, because as long as you understand the mechanic, it's then executing on it that makes it a challenge. Because there really isn't much margin for error, despite somebody soloing the whole thing.
No, he didn't solo the whole thing. He just
soloed
the
Oryx fight. Yeah. I thought if you're looking at the raid as a whole, the jumping sections obviously had their pros and cons. I was running it as a hunter, which made certain parts of it a little more challenging. The totems fight I thought was fairly straightforward and actually fairly easy, and probably a good place to start. I'm not counting the relic thing at the very beginning. The War Priest fight is also super straightforward, and it sounds like the challenge mode isn't really that much of a challenge, since it's not that different than what a lot of people do normally. The Golgoroth fight introduced at least enough interesting mechanics to sort of keep it challenging without being overwhelming. It's interesting. I actually think there's less margin for error in the Sisters fight than there is in the Oryx fight.
I think they're about on the same level. We've actually killed Sisters with 4. It just depends on who survives and at what point they survive. Like if you have at least one hunter with a tether and everyone's running Tom, you can probably kill the last daughter with 4. Same with if you manage to get a Weapons of Light bubble up. I think you can. I think the Oryx fight, at least for me, is a little less forgiving, just because like if you screw up daughters, that's 2 minutes you're down. Even if you got to the second daughter, that's 2 minutes max. But if you fuck up on Oryx, that's 5 or 6 minutes depending on where you are. Especially if you're at the end, when it's more like 10 to 15 minutes for the entire run.
Yeah, I guess the part of the daughters that gets to me is that you can't control who the relic holder is.
That is true, right.
Everyone has to be able to do the jumping part. And, there were a number of times, since I think I spent close to 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours with various groups of people trying to get through that one. There were various times where it's like, okay, 5 of the 6 people can do the jumping well. 3 of the 6 people can always get the jumping no problem. And then, invariably, it's like the second time, it's the one person who routinely doesn't make the jumps, or, it's one of the people who has a little harder time with it, and then the clock is low, and, that I think is the big variable there. Whereas the Oryx one is at least more predictable, and you can basically run the same thing over and over and over again.
Right. I know, like, teaching the raid, and especially the Oryx fight, has been particularly difficult for me, because of all the mechanics. I think it helps when you have something like your situation where you've gone over it, you just haven't executed. And I think it's important to obviously have that preparation, but the execution is key. And when you're taking someone who has never even seen that fight before, and you have to explain every single mechanic, it can get a little bit hairy, especially if they really just don't catch on. I've had raid teammates where they've insisted on vocal call-outs for everything, and we're already calling out everything, but it's just one of those things where it is tough. It is a lot of mechanics going on. It's one of the reasons why I like taking people through Vault of Glass, because I feel like that raid is the right mix of, hey, you have to be decent at a first-person shooter, and you have to be able to execute as a team. I think with King's Fall, it's much less important to be a solid shooter kind of person. You have to absolutely 100% work as a group.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, you absolutely have to have the gear. We saw that, no question. Even being over the light level isn't necessarily enough.
Yeah. It's amazing how much Touch of Malice helps, like at all points of those last two fights. Like basically, we run, like my personal loadout for King's Fall is I start off with I start off with like Red Death or something like that. Then I have an Irini RR4 that is up to 315, I think, these days. And then I have a Quillen's Terminus or sometimes I'll mix it up and take a sleeper in to kill witches at the Totems fight. Then I use that pretty much that same loadout at the War Priest. I minus the rocket launcher just because rocket launchers are kind of a pain. Although I do have one that is anti-wizard, so that's nice. And then after Golgoroth, I switch to Tom and then keep the sniper and then do some other legendary heavy.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about the Oryx fight is, the one time out of the 3 different groups I tried it with, we did have one guy who had never done it before, and the way we seemed to have the most success in trying to get him to understand the mechanics was really just saying, it's fine if we wipe. We just want to get to this point so you see what's happening here. So, the first time we only tried to clear through, to the first stagger. If we staggered him, great. If not, at least you sort of get the idea of he's going to slam the thing. People got to jump on the platforms. You got to kill the ogres. Then you got to get to the middle. You got to kill the knight. Then you got to detonate the lights. And then didn't worry about okay, now you got to go run laps. And then you got to do it again. And then you got to wait for the thing with the bubble. And
yeah, there's so many little steps. And one thing we found, especially with newer players, is it's best to assign them to a job. Like give them especially if you're running on normal, because with normal, you really don't have to run the order. You can assign someone to a plate and it's just fine.
Yep.
So when we do that, we always assign newer players to plates. But even then, like, what if your plate has the spark over it? Well, then you float. Okay, well, then you have to remind that person, especially if they haven't done it before, that they still need to go detonate their bomb. And then they have to be able to come back, and they just not have to die. We actually had someone disagree just vehemently about reviving someone right before mortars. And we're like, no, leave them dead. That's one less person that needs to be running around a platform or wherever during mortars. And he's like, no, I'm going to revive him anyway. And we're like, no, don't do that. Yeah. That literally makes no sense. I mean, if you have the revive, just wait when it's safe and it'll be fine. Especially if you let that person who's getting revived know, hey, as soon as you get revived, it's go time. So I don't know. But but I'm glad to hear you're having fun with Destiny. And have you tried what's your light level now? When are you gonna give hard mode a shot?
Where am I at now? I was actually looking at my character, but I have a bunch of other stuff equipped for the gunsmith and whatnot. I think I'm at about a 297, 298.
Okay, cool.
Currently running a Suros Dis 43. That's a 300. 302 Defiance of Yasmin, and varies on which I have a couple of different 295 heavies.
Yeah. One thing that you'll definitely want to do, especially since challenge mode is dropped, that'll give you a guaranteed 310 artifact and a 310 weapon of some sort, and then whatever else normally drops from Gorgoroth. And what's nice is that you can still sort of use the one bubble strategy with Gorgoroth. You just have to modify it a little bit if you want to do challenge mode.
Yeah, I actually got a 310 artifact out of Iron Banner. So
cool.
Got that. The other thing that's interesting is supposedly there's 310 and 320 drops out of the Sparrow Racing that launched today.
Yeah, we were doing that earlier, and I did get a helmet, and I got a new speeder, but I have the Refer a Friend Infinite Link one with the Charm Lights, so that's the one I've been using.
I've been using the Year One Guardian one that they gave us all.
The Raven Steel.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super fun. Like I played for a little while, just kind of on my own, and then we went off and did Sword Strikes, and then after we did Salvage, we rolled into racing because one of our friends' teammates joined us, and then we had friend of the show Neriel join us with one of her friends, so we rounded out the 6-person racing. And I really like the fact that you can pull a 6-person fire team into racing and do that. It's a nice it's competitive obviously, but it's a little bit, I want to say, nicer than like Rumble or something like that. Even though like I really want them to be able to like maybe give us custom games or something like that, so we can have like a 6-person fire team and then just all rumble against each other. That would be super fun. And I don't care that they might like disable bounties or anything on it. Just let us do that. But I think Sparrow Racing is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. I haven't had a chance to test it yet, but I had my PS4 running the update after I got home, so I'll probably go check it out after I'm done on here.
Oh, we should go play together. Oh.
Yeah. But it sounds like Larry may be joining up soon. He may be my Refer a Friend.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he was talking about it on Facebook, and I know that our friends Kyle, and Kyle Arcane from the site also plays on PS4. And I think Dan Cottle does too.
And my brother-in-law doesn't know it yet, but he's getting a PS4 for Christmas, and I got him Destiny, so another possible Refer a Friend. So
you're not the first person to do that. I know people who have actually bought Xbox Ones as Christmas presents with Destiny, and now that person is their Refer a Friend. And it's not specifically for that, but they had planned to get them an Xbox One anyway for, just because it's a great gift. It's just one of those things that's a fringe benefit. Oh, I'm also getting you Destiny, and you are also going to be my Refer a Friend. Yep. I actually finished the Refer a Friend quest last week, I think. Took my duckling through a Nightfall, and we actually finished it. How was the Refer a Friend Legendary Sword? Is it worthwhile or not so much? I don't know. I haven't really used it. It's like, if I'm going to take a sword anywhere, the reason why I'm taking a sword is because of a specific reason. So I'm either going into Crucible for quests, in which I'm going to take my Bowcaster, or I'm going to be going and fighting a big boss, in which case I'll take my Raise Lighter. For Dark Drinker, I really just haven't found a purpose for it. It's the Void Sword with the AoE. Yep. I think if the Fogoth Strike was a thing, like that was something that you could roll into in like Heroic, I would consider it for that, because you get surrounded by ads so much that it would be really good for crowd control. I kind of wonder if you could use it for crowd control at the beginning of the Saber Strike in the Warsat part. The problem with that, because those do all drop in pretty close clusters. You just have to run over to them. That is true. And some of when they are fall or taken, you can get like wizards with purple shields, so you can go up and bash them. Yeah, I might have to give that a try next time, because I know since Saber Strike was the Nightfall last week, and it was actually Voidburn, so that would have been perfect. Wow, fuck me. Anyway, but we eventually got through it and finished out the quest. So we got our Infinite Link speeders, and that was super awesome. And And my refer friend is apparently freaky good at this racing game type. So there's a little. We were once these bonded teammates, and now we're bitter racing rivals. So, fun fact: we've talked about Destiny for 30 minutes.
Yes, we have.
Yay! We should probably talk about your book.
We should.
This book. So, I know you had dabbled in authoring before, but I saw that all of a sudden this thing called the Elf Bucket started following me on Twitter. And I'm like, wow, what is that? And I looked at the author and I'm like, Methenitis. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a second. And I thought I saw that it was co-authored, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. So tell us a little bit about how that book came to be.
So yeah, it actually dates back to something my parents started doing in, must have been like 83 when I was 2. When I was little, obviously little kids, it's always rough between Thanksgiving and Christmas because, there are Christmas decorations up everywhere. Everybody's talking about presents and Santa, and, it can be tough to hold them off for that long to get ready for Christmas. And so my parents came up with this idea, and they told me that, the elf would come visit me every night, December 1st through the 23rd, so that the last one showed up on Christmas Eve. And the elf would hide this little metal bucket that was about 3 inches tall and maybe 3 or 4 inches across the top, with a little piece of candy in it. And that was hugely successful because, of course, kids love finding things and kids love candy. And when my sister was born shortly thereafter, they did the same thing with her as soon as she was old enough to kind of figure it out. And that was something that then got passed over to I have 2 cousins who are 12 and 15 years younger than me. So it got passed over to them, and then it got eventually passed back over to my kids, who were 3 and 6. And, one of the things that my parents had said for, quite a while, once I was, old enough to know that they were the ones behind it, was, we really should write a story about it and, try and get other people to do it because it's such a fun thing. And, there's, at that point, there wasn't really anything else like it. Now there are some other things out there that are kind of similar, but, after hearing them talk about that for over a decade, I finally kind of called them on it and wrote the story, at least the first draft of it. Showed it to them. They thought it was pretty cool. And then talked to my grandmother, who is in her 80s, but still a very talented artist. And she, took some time to revise a little bit of the story and then illustrated everything that went along with it. And so that process ended up taking about a year, but then finally a couple weeks ago, we kind of got all the ducks in a row and actually got it all finished. And you can buy print copies of it or digital copies of it on Amazon right now.
I'm bringing up the link, and you can indeed just search for the Elf Bucket on Amazon.com or smiles.amazon.com and support that Child's Play. Because really, what other charity you're going to support? You're not going to support anything but Child's Play. Just set it to Child's Play and go from there. Point is, hey, Jack, how you doing?
Hey, I got an author on there. Let me say how cool it is to take like a family tradition like that and to be able to share that with the world through the Elf Bucket. And the art I was looking at, it has that classic holiday, like Christmas feel to it, like in terms of the warmth of it, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother's style is definitely much more traditional art style than a lot of the kids' books you see out today. So, it's kind of an interesting contrast from so many of the other things on the kids' shelves, seeing her work out there. And, Jonathan, I know you've seen at least the painting she did for my older son, if not the one for my younger son, too. And I'm sure you can probably see a resemblance in, some of the characterizations and whatnot from those paintings to what she did for the book.
Yeah, it's a very, it is the kind of children's book that I would have read as a kid. Absolutely. When I'm looking through the story and I'm looking for, especially like Jack was saying, the art and the feel, it's something classic. It looks like it goes right next to the Polar Express and some of those other holiday books that are, that are that are inferior products to the Elf Bucket. Let's just be honest.
Well, and the other cool thing is all those pictures, if you look really close at them, you can see all the detail. They were all done in colored pencil, all by hand. There's no crazy Photoshop textures to make it look like colored pencil or something else. When she did those pages, which are actually the pages themselves, the originals are a little bit larger than the printed book. We took them and photographed them because we couldn't find a high enough resolution, large format scanner to do it justice.
Oh, okay, that's cool. So I'm guessing your lovely photographer wife helped out a little?
She did help with that one. I would set up the pages. She had her stuff on a tripod, got the shots. Then she went in and, cropped out the excess floor and whatnot in the background to get it down to the right size for the page. She was invaluably helpful in that process.
So not only is it a family book for the holidays, it was literally a family effort.
Literally a family effort.
Well, extra literally a family effort. I get it.
Literally literature. That was a literal family effort.
That wasn't even.
Let's say the word literally like we're being sponsored by it.
Or if it's like the word you say where you hear it, you scream real loud, per that classic documentary, Pee-wee's Playhouse. But I don't know if you're a dad. Like, have you had any chance to share this with your kids, and what's the feedback been from them?
Oh yeah, the kids love it. I mean, they had been doing the Elf Bucket for years, so it was really cool to them, not only to see it, as a story that they could go read, but if you actually get a copy of the book, there are 6 kids included as part of the story in terms of who was getting the Elf Bucket, and the 6 kids are myself, my sister, my 2 cousins, and my sons. And the drawings actually look like all of those folks as kids, me at much, much younger and everybody else at respectively younger, with the boys being about the age they are now. And that made it particularly cool for some of the folks, like my sister-in-law and brother-in-law who live in Florida, got a copy of it for their kids. And when their kids saw it, they were like, oh my gosh, look who it is, because they could immediately recognize that it was, my kids, their cousins. So that was exciting to hear.
That's rad, and it seems to be your attempt at immortality through the medium of children's literature, trying to get some of that Christopher Robin Fountain of Youth stuff going.
Well, I picked the names just based on the fact that those were the sort of original 6 kids to get the Elf Bucket. And then, was not expecting my grandmother to necessarily draw all of us in the book that way. But it's pretty cool the way it turned out.
And it's kind of a cool kind of collaboration where you have an author and an illustrator. Like, I'm thinking of comic books immediately, where you have, artists who often throw in stuff that the writer may not have anticipated, but becomes part and parcel with the meaning of the text. Like, I want to say certain X-Men artists drawing in like real world figures, or just putting in like DC comic characters just to screw with the other team.
Yeah, there are actually a lot of little things like that again, I wasn't expecting in the book. There are a couple of places where a dachshund shows up, and that was my grandmother inserting my dog, who goes over to visit her on a regular basis, into the book. And then there's one particular illustration that's a front door, and it is, dead on my parents' front door. Just little things like that people wouldn't necessarily know, that I think are cool, because they kind of got slipped in that way.
And the little touches, and it's nice to have something out there that's a pretty simple, like wholesome, but entertaining. Like, I feel like if something's too wholesome or too family friendly, people are afraid that it's boring. But on the other hand, like, people don't want stuff that's like filthy either. I mean, you can't really show Die Hard to small children, even though it's totally a Christmas movie. But with this, the Elf Bucket, I mean, from what I'm seeing or hearing so far, it sounds like it hits that happy medium where it's a fun story for kids, and adults can appreciate stuff with it too. And it's part of that. You're now part of this sort of tapestry of holiday and Christmas related material that includes stuff like Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Heat Miser and Cold Miser, in a way.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea was really to get it out there so that, more parents would do the sort of bucket thing for their kids. And on our website, elfbucket.com, we've got some links on Amazon to buckets like the ones that I used originally. The ones that my kids are using now are actually the one my mom found shortly after my sister was born when she needed a second bucket. She found this pair of little wooden buckets with bears on them that appear in a bunch of the pictures. And those are the ones that, my kids are using to this day, 30-ish years later.
Look at these pails. You got all kinds of options from Prime or smile.amazon.com where you can support Child's Play or the Serial Online Catholic Kicks Arcade. Just throwing it out there. Child's Play is cool too.
The other comment I've gotten from a number of parents who've read it is, again, I don't know how much you guys see children's books these days, but some of them have gotten a little long and wordy. And if you're a parent reading it out loud to your kids, you don't necessarily want to be droning on for, a half an hour or more. And, this one, it's concise enough that it tells the story, but it doesn't go on and on and on like some of the other kids' books I know we have do.
And, the idea of an elf visitation is such a fun one where really, the story we've been selling kids for a long time, or the absolute truth, depending on your beliefs on this, is that it's a grown man who's going to, sort of violate your territory to drop off things. An elf is a lot less offensive in some ways, a lot less threatening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the fact that they make it a fun game for the kids, I think, is really, part of the fun of it, too. Because I know every morning my boys get up and the first thing they want to do for those 23 days in December is, okay, where's the elf bucket? What did they bring me this morning? The other great thing about the bucket is it's nice and flexible. My parents pretty much only ever got candy. And, if you're a family on a budget, buying a bag of candy to do that for, 23 days is a pretty reasonable expense. My cousins got some things that were a little more exotic, and my kids, every couple of days get something that's a little more fun and fancy than just a piece of candy or a pencil or something. In fact, I guess it was yesterday, the little one got a new Hot Wheel and the older one got a Minecraft minifigure. So,
man, those elves, they crazy.
Still small, still kind of fits in the bucket, but
sure.
It's a little more fun, and occasionally they get something that doesn't fit in the bucket. They got Inside Out, I guess last Friday, along with some new slippers because they needed new slippers. But
more than anything else, it seems like adding magic to kids' lives, like giving them some sense of wonder, which I think is sorely missing. I mean, I'm thinking particularly of video. I think One Cup Dad decided to make he convinces kids that their action figures come to life while they're sleeping, and he would just pose them in certain ways where it looks like they're painting or doing dishes or trying to escape from the TV, and he just do that to give his kids a sense of wonder. And the Elf Bucket seems to do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that I think kids don't get as much of these days as perhaps we did when we were kids. I think technology takes a lot of the mystery out of many things, but there are still places you can do that, whether it's at home or I know the first time we took my older son to a Disney park, a lot of that stuff is pretty magical. There's there are definitely things still out there that can give them that sense of magic and wonder. It's just can be a little harder these days than it perhaps was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
It's true. So, real talk here. Jonathan, if I put out an elf bucket, what do you think I could find in there the next day?
Wait, so is the elf bucket for you or for...
For me. I'm going to put out an elf bucket because I'm hoping that the elves give me some swag.
Let's see. I would probably... You would get something small that is good for you. Oh, I know. You would get a Brave Star action figure.
Yes! Man, I'll be the envy of New Texas.
Why is it that Brave Star comes up in every other show?
Dude, that was you. I didn't mention Brave Star.
I'm just saying, I hang around with you too much.
Bro.
Oh my God.
Well, me and Jesse Thorne from Bullseye, or Sound of Young America. Oh yeah, I guess it is Bullseye now. See, Jonathan, I think you would find like a tiny kitty cat playing with something in the bucket.
Oh my God, that would be so awesome. I know a friend of mine that I had just met at the board gaming convention. They apparently have these covers for your phone's headphone jack, and they are little kitties. So you just stick them there, and then there's a kitty on the top of your phone, and they're fucking
That
cool.
also would fit in an elf bucket. Although the holy grail of Christmas presents for me is the Hess truck. I don't know if you guys have Hess gas stations around where you are.
No.
Nope.
No, nerds. It's an East Coast thing probably, but yeah, like apparently at gas stations they'd sell like these, like if you fueled up you can get like an extra $10 or something. Back in the day, you get an actual truck. So I've told my wife, when she asked me what I want for Christmas, I said I would like a Hess truck. It's been 33 years. It's time.
See, I was thinking Jonathan's elf bucket would have one of those Destiny engram stress balls.
Oh God, I almost ordered one of those for me. Although, like, I would definitely, if you were to give me a random one of those, I would definitely get a blue. I wouldn't get the purple. I wouldn't get the fucking yellow. I would get a blue.
I don't know, man. Taking like an engram like in your elf bucket and having to take it to the cryptarch to decipher. Thanks for making my journey to Christmas one step longer, you elf jerks.
You know, Jack, before you showed up, we talked about Destiny for 30 minutes. Like half of this show is Destiny talk. So,
well, you know, it would just decrypt into a modal light anyway.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, so legitimate issue and something that I did see on Reddit.
Here comes a gripe.
During one of our strikes, I got a exotic boot engram for my Titan. And I'm like, oh, sweet. So it dropped from a 3 of coins. I go to decrypt it, get nothing. Absolutely nothing. Like,
you know,
no
I
votes.
saw that on Reddit too.
Yes. It happened to me. So actually, when I get done with this show, the video that I shot, I'm going to upload it and I'm going to be like, what the hell? I'm going to actually chime in on a Reddit thread, because I will say, and the Sparrow Racing League is definitely a product of this. Bungie listens. Bungie actually does take in this feedback. Maybe not all of it, but at least a good sampling. I know that Sparrow Racing was something that had been asked for since day one. And I know it's now day 330 or 390 something, but that's fine. We finally gotten it. And I think if enough of a stink is made of this, then something will happen. Those of us who have been wrong will be right. I don't know, but we'll see. But yes, that's like normally those weird bugs and stuff don't happen to me. This is one of the first that actually has affected me personally. Screw them. No vitriol here.
None. Nothing but suns. You know, I feel like the elf bucket could be integrated into any kind of holiday special we would do with our characters from D&D.
So what would I'm pretty sure I know what you and I characters would get, but since they're
I get a freaking apple.
Yeah. I would get a tiny like hand exerciser.
I believe it.
What would Bernice Q Burns get?
Oh man, I'm thinking maybe like something related to her, whatever saddle or harness she uses.
Oh, she'd get a box of matches.
There you go. Because she loves fire so much.
What about Carlton Tanks?
Oh man, I'm trying to think, like something related to him raging. I would think maybe a pair of brass knucks.
Maybe he'd get the stress ball.
Maybe. And he'd eat it.
Yeah, he would eat it because he's dumb.
Oh gosh, I should have posted that thing to the. I think anytime I find something D&D related, I'm gonna instead of posting it to one of your individual pages, I'm just gonna post it to the Glib Shark main page.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. It'd get a little bit more reach.
That'd be downright decent of you, Jagga.
So I never got to talk to you about football at all this last season.
No, and what a long season it was.
It was definitely a season. I will say, since I really didn't have a dog in the fight, that Texas Baylor game was so fucking fun.
It was, and honestly, I thought the Texas Tech game was fun despite the outcome. The one thing I was thinking the whole time was, it's like, we have this Warren kid. Where has he been all season? Why do we have this guy sitting on the bench when clearly he can set a running record in his first appearance?
Maybe next year?
Maybe we'll have a new offensive coordinator who actually, has a clue.
I think that's why a lot of people were rooting for Greg Davis at Iowa. Well, I should say a lot of people who hate Texas, because they wanted to see him succeed outside of the Texas system. But then he went and lost to Michigan State. And he might be back. The Hawkeyes very well may be back in the picture next year. But at least for now, that a lot of that talk kind of died down once the outcome of that game happened. Which game wasn't nearly as fun.
Yeah. Like I said, we'll have to see what happens in the offseason here, but it certainly sounds like with the new athletic director in place that Strong is actually going to get to hire the offensive coordinator he wants to hire, as opposed to the inside sources say that Steve Patterson told him, nope, here's your budget, go do what you can.
It's kind of hard to build a winning program when you're hamstrung like that.
Yeah, and Steve Patterson was clearly not the right guy to be the AD at Texas.
So, how do you think the bowl season is going to shake out? First, just speaking just on the bowls as a whole, how do you feel about 5 and 7 teams getting to go to bowls?
On the one hand, it's like that certainly is an awful lot of bowls if we have to be filling it out with teams that don't even have winning records. On the other hand, I suppose the APR method was as good as any if we're going to have to set the bowl season beforehand and may have that potential problem. Though I think you could have come up with, potentially more interesting matchups out of the 5 and 7 teams if you weren't just absolutely going down the list of, you have the top APR, you have the next APR. Because, I think a 5 and 7 Texas would have actually made an interesting opponent in some of those leftover bowls.
Yeah.
Especially coming off those, last couple of games where they actually seem to have a clue about a few things.
I just really, if bowls die, then they die. I am okay with a reduction in the number of bowls, because it's just, the amount is ridiculous. And when you're filling them with trash, I think it's going to sort itself out. I think the fact that you are going to have these E tier and F tier bowls filled out by 5 and 7 teams, it's going to work itself out, because the big motivator for all of this is money. And if you don't get the viewership and you don't get the ticket sales, you're not going to make any money. Your bowl folds. That's fine. And if it gets to the point where there are no bowls coming in to fill the empty spots, I'm okay with that too.
So just like cable television, the bowls are due for a massive implosion.
I think it would be interesting if one of the bowls signed a deal with Netflix.
Netflix bowl? Wow, I'd watch that. Or I don't even care who would be playing. I'm thinking about bowls lately only because Temple University, which historically has been an underperforming football team, all of a sudden has come to national prominence. And now they're playing in a bowl game I've never even heard of before, the Boca Raton Bowl, which is sponsored by Marmot or something. But I don't remember who they're playing. It's somebody. It's a college team. I'll give you that much. They're not playing a high school. Narrowed it down to a university.
Good job. That's good detective work.
Crackerjack
journalism here on the Glib Shark.
Yeah, I think the main thing that still needs to get resolved, though, is the 4-team playoff, at least with the current status of all the different leagues, is not a long-term workable solution. Either we need to get to an 8-team playoff, or we need to narrow it down to there are only 4 leagues that get to play in.
Yeah. I think that for me personally, the 8-team playoff is the way to go. And I think what you could probably do is maybe even work in some of the conference championships somehow. Like maybe the winners of like the first round is like you were talking about, having the 4 teams that play in those conference championships could be the first round. Now you would get people like Notre Dame or who get left out, or you get some of those lesser conferences that could potentially make some noise in the playoffs that wouldn't get in under that system. The thing you have to remember is that it's all about time with the college game, and you don't have enough of it.
Toledo. Temple will play Toledo. But,
I just thought you were just saying Toledo just to interject.
I mean, that could be my sweet Christmas. Toledo. Nevertheless, I get what you're saying, and there's no follow-up. I just get what you're saying.
But yeah, I think the 18 playoff is, at least for college, is the ideal.
Yeah, and I can see like even Notre Dame like caucusing with another conference for the purposes of playoff seeding. Like they wouldn't join per se, but for the purpose of just getting to that main game, they would.
You know what? If we don't go to an 18 playoff, then Notre Dame can join a league.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not going to be
flirting with the Big Ten and the ACC, they can sack up, make a choice, and stick with it.
Wait, are you calling Notre Dame Big T's?
Yes. I know how that sounds. I'm Catholic.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to have an 18 playoff and you're going to stick with the 4, it really needs to be, say 4 16-team conferences that then the winner of each of the 4 conferences are the 4 teams in the playoff and call it a day. I mean, you're going to have to collapse out one of the big 5 conferences, but you should be able to reshuffle it to work.
And that would probably cause some sort of like realignment, like the likes of which we haven't seen since I guess 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was about to say it wasn't that long ago when it was almost the Pac-16 with what was it going to be? It was going to be like Baylor, Texas, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma.
Texas Tech, Texas, Oklahoma State.
That's right. Baylor was going to get left behind, which is not going to happen because of the powers that be.
It's all Ann Richards' fault.
Yep. That crazy broad.
Yeah. And then the whole I remember that. It wasn't even long ago. That whole seismic shift in conferences.
No, it literally wasn't that long ago. It was the whole Missouri and Colorado jumping ship.
I think it was 2012.
Yeah, and A&M leaving and
Nebraska leaving.
So when they thought that the world was going to end about 3 years ago, they were really just referring to this massive conference realignment. In retrospect.
Yeah. And what, has any, honestly, has any good come out of those moves? You could argue that A&M was sort of competitive for a little bit when they had Manziel. But what noise have they made since then? What noise is Missouri making in wherever they're playing now? Or Colorado? Is Colorado competitive in the Pac-12 or Pac-16?
They're probably profitable. I think they're making money hand over fist.
To be fair, Colorado wasn't competitive in the Big 12 either. So
well, that's what I'm saying. Neither was any of those other teams that I mentioned. When was the last time that A&M went to a Big 12 championship?
Nebraska was the only one that actually had some, and they would relatively consistently win the North. But the North was the redheaded stepchild compared to the South, where all the power was.
Right. Yeah, it was all about the Big 12 South and then everyone else.
Yep.
Well, all kinds of crazy things happening. If these teams remain bad, I could see the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Redskins, and the Giants moving to the bowl series.
Did you just name the NFC East?
I just named the NFC East. The NFC East will join
they're getting demoted.
They're that bad this year.
Yeah, there are probably a couple college teams that can take on these teams.
There's going to be like relegation matches. And
the Cowboys are even still in the Big East or in the NFC East championship discussion.
It's a nightmare. It's like last year's NFC South and then the NFC West of 2 years ago.
Okay, aside from the Browns, has anyone else been eliminated from playoff contention?
That's a good question. Is San Francisco still in it? I don't think they would be because there's no path for them to win their division, and they're probably too far behind to. mean, even if they win out, they're going to finish, what, 8-8?
But, I mean, 8-8 teams have failed to make the playoffs before. It's just all about your division.
They have,
right. I have no idea what theirs is like.
But in that division, I think it's Arizona is, running away with it. St. Louis is ahead of them, and then Seattle, I think, is sort of catching up on them. But Seattle's like 5-7 or something like that, or 6-6. I forget what they are. But I think they're too far behind. Like, if they were in the NFC East, they still have a shot, mind you. But nobody doesn't win that division is going to the playoffs. So, I mean, I think mathematically it might. Tampa Bay. How's Tampa Bay doing? Are they good? I don't even know their record. Tampa. They're historically bad, but who knows? They kicked the crap out of the Eagles, though. Bucks record. Magic Alive Radio, folks. They are currently 6-6, so they're still in it. The Saints are probably a little bit too far behind to catch up to, but I don't know that they're mathematically eliminated. Oof. Football. Pro Sparks. See, it might just be the Browns at this point. I'm sorry, I killed the conversation with professional football.
It happens.
It happens. Oh, gosh, this is going to be a big Sunday in my house, actually. So the Eagles play the Bills on Sunday. My wife is a Bills fan. I am, of course, an Eagles fan. So every time we watch the game together, the team we want to win together, always loses, whether it's a Super Bowl or whether it's just a regular Eagles game. So we have no idea what's going to happen.
I guess the AFC South is actually looking about as sad as the NFC East.
That's true.
The Colts and the Texans are both 6-6. The Jags are 4-8, and the Titans are 3-9.
No, the Titans at that record. Oh man,
one of those teams is going to the playoffs, guys.
Yeah.
Well, so is one of the Redskins, the Eagles, the Giants at 5-7, and the Cowboys at 4-8.
I don't has the NFL playoff method been revisited, and will it be revisited after next year?
I can see them moving. Now, we talked about this before, moving to a model where, maybe the division winner still goes to the playoffs, but they no longer get a home game. That's the other thing, too. Whatever team of those 4 teams wins, makes playoffs or wins the division, they're getting a home game. Even though they might go 7-9 or worse. Or 6-10 to 10 mathematically.
Well, I think
mathematically it's possible for them when one of those teams goes 6-10.
And, maybe the NFL is due since MLB redid their playoff thing, 3 years ago? 4
Oh, the sudden
ago?
death, what do you call it? Playoff.
Well, or 2 years ago when they shifted the Astros to the American League to balance it all out.
And now it's interleague play all year round, right? Yeah, I mean...
And NHL just redid theirs.
Yeah, so it's been, 2005, 13 years already.
Yeah, the hockey just redid their whole thing, realigning the divisions and everything a couple years ago, too.
And with, I think one of 3 teams potentially moving to Los Angeles, now might be the time to pull a trigger on it.
Yeah, you could get maybe... So, do you think the NFL and the fandom in general is better served by strictly regional divisions, or does the cross-country divisions like the NFC quote-unquote East still make sense? I mean, obviously we don't have to worry about travel. There's a lot of money involved. Travel is not a thing.
Unless travel in London, in which case it isn't.
Well, no, fuck that. We're not even going there. We're not crossing the Atlantic. We probably won't even cross the
border,
the northern border.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, that said, Dallas, there's too much money there, I think. But I could see them consolidating divisions. There's no reason the NFC East and South couldn't combine. And then you keep the schedules more or less the way they are now, but just for playoff seeding, you have divisions where, maybe you play Carolina once a month. Maybe you play, or you alternate. You figure out some sort of way to realign it. So you have 4 divisions of 8 teams each, so that whoever wins that division probably belongs there.
So you guys... How would you guys feel with less divisional rivalry games in a year?
I don't think you need to sacrifice those. I think you just...
Well, no. I'm just saying, I'm not saying sacrifice them. I'm saying less of them.
You mean just 1 as opposed to 2?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I'm in the division where like there's kind of the heart of that problem, right? So I feel like people get up, they get ramped up about those Cowboys games. That's a rivalry that's been almost 50 years in the making, you know? So I think that's a lot of money left on the table, especially since 3 of the 4 largest, like, you know, most valuable teams in the league are just in that division. So I don't think you need to do it. I think you can still do 2 games against each of those 3 teams and then 1 game against your new divisional rivals and then figure out something for the other divisions once in a while.
But I guess at what point are they no longer new?
Well, not new. They're valuable, and I think
no. But what I'm saying is, in your model where you combine divisions, and so like you said, you have these new divisional rivals. At what point do you shift the value away from whatever came before, which is gone, versus what you have now?
That's a good question. Like, it depends on how those things take off. If it turns out that the Eagles and the Falcons really hate each other, then you can revisit. I would say it would take at least 10 years to establish anything. Even like the West is kind of a hodgepodge division, right? You only have 2 teams in the legacy NFC West. Everything else is in the South now. So, but now I think you got a pretty healthy rivalry between the Seahawks and the Niners, or the Seahawks and the Cardinals, who were originally from the AFC East. But it took 13 years to get there. And with Dallas being in the NFC East/South or whatever they call it, like, you get some really good geographic rivalries. You get like New Orleans right there. You get Atlanta right there. You get Tampa Bay, and teams that are relatively closer. Every team in the NFC South is easier for Dallas to get to than any of their current rivals. So eventually, you might move to a place where the money is good enough and is spread out enough that you might be able to realign them in a different way if the league expands. But it would take, I would say, at least a decade to even be able to entertain it.
One of the other things that's interesting is, at least just looking at it in terms of who all's in which divisions, it becomes much easier, at least on the NFC side, to say, you know, pair the East and the South, pair the North and the West, and then you've kind of split up a bunch of the traditional big-name power-y teams from some of the newer upstarty teams and kind of kept it as a mix. And if you put the East and the North together, you'd end up with a division of all, you know, major history, huge name franchises. So those need to go in separate directions. On the AFC side, it's a lot harder without shuffling people. Just because, I mean, everybody's got at least one, you know, traditional big name team, if not 2, from the get-go.
Yeah. I mean, you probably have to pair teams up and do it that way. Like, you figure out in the AFC who are the 2 biggest rivals. So you'd have to keep regardless what you do, you have to keep New England and the Jets together. You have to keep Buffalo and Miami together. You have to keep, and just do it kind of that way, and then figure out where the geography lands. I've thought about this a lot.
But okay, but in the case of and I'm not trying to make it difficult or anything, but sure. How do you divide up the NFC East? Which of those rivals are the classic rivals? I think they all are.
Well, I think the idea would be you would take the entire East and pair it with the entire South, and the entire North and pair it with the entire West. Yeah. And then, you know, the East and the North are 4 big name, big history teams. The South and the West have some more of the latecomers and newer teams, such that you don't end up with a big mismatch between, you know, traditional powers, newer things, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, whereas the AFC, it's much more spread out. There aren't 2 divisions that it's like, wow, all 4 of those teams have a huge major legacy and, you know, that kind of thing. I guess maybe it's already spread out enough that it doesn't matter as much who you
I was about to say, because if you don't have to do that, then any pairing would work.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the AFC, you could do the East and the North, because they're all kind of, except for Miami, they're all kind of in one corner. And then you would do the West and the South. And there's a little bit more travel involved in that, but I mean, I think with the South, you don't have as many big name teams. You have,
but again, I think unless you're talking about like transatlantic flights, or maybe true cross country, like New York to LA kind of flights. Right. I think anything else is irrelevant to professional sports, because they don't it makes a lot more sense for college, because you do want your tennis team not having to use the charter jet. You want them to be able to drive to whatever match they have.
Sure, but with the money being big enough as it is, you could do, in theory, divisions of anything.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
you could just...
With professionals, it doesn't matter.
Right.
I would say the only sport where travel does matter, or actually, I guess with basketball, it does, because you could have an arduous journey and then have to play the next night. Baseball, definitely, travel makes a difference. Although
Right,
in those cases, you're playing a series in a town.
Yeah, so you have a couple of days, so you could always put a day or two for travel between each series if it's a longer thing.
Which pro sport, and it doesn't have to be a team sport, does travel affect the most? You don't have to answer this. Yeah, but I was just kind of curious.
Hey, if you listeners, if you have an answer, tweet us at Glib Shark.
I don't know that we have any listeners.
We'll read it. Well, after the fact, when they're downloading this to their devices and listening on their smartphones or their computers at home.
Did you listen to the new episode of Dungeons and Dragons and Drunks?
I've been trying to. Like, I tried to download it. It says...
Try or try not.
Do or do not. There is no try. But no, I haven't had a chance to yet. It's the Wayland episode, so I'm really looking forward to it when I finally get.
Oh God, it is. I really liked this episode. I think it turned out very well. There's one voice that Obo Crazy does that just cracked me up. It was one of her better voices, and it was for guard number 1.
I think I remember that. I'm gonna have to listen to this again.
I'm not gonna do an impression because you really should just listen to the show, but it's really good. We have a treasure in our good friend Obo Crazy.
We do. And we have a treasure in our good friend. I'm not even sure how we did it. M.A. Methenitis? Is that how we're addressing you on the show? I missed the opening, of course.
No, we're just calling Mark.
Mark, yes.
It's just me.
All right. At this point, okay, so there's no Veil of Illusion anymore.
There's no Veil of Illusion on this one for sure.
Okay.
But other veils may be intact.
Yeah, I mean, it's the main reason I ended up putting MA instead of Mark on it was actually a Google result thing. I didn't want the elf bucket crossing paths with the law of the game stuff and some of the other things, just to try and keep it a little more separated. Not that I'm trying to hide my affiliation with this one or anything.
There you go. I mean, I get it. Like, I've went by my initials before, so we all know the drill. But you can actually, folks, you can find the elf bucket on Amazon. You can buy it from Amazon.com or smile.amazon.com if you want that money going for like a certain charity. And you can follow Mark at
elf_bucket, or you can check out elfbucket.com, which does also have some good tips for parents and pictures of examples of the buckets being hidden and other stuff if you're looking to set the game up for your kids.
It's very exciting. Next week, Roadblock discovers the true meaning of Christmas, then promptly loses it.
What? No, hold on. I do know the spirit of Christmas, and it is, okay, cynicism mode on. It's money. So I am going to be working on Christmas and Christmas Eve, and I'm going to be making a shitload of money.
I thought the true spirit of Christmas this year was Star Wars.
Oh, but we are 10 days from 10 days? 9 days. I just dropped my controller because I was so goddamn excited.
Well, I'm sure any number of the things we just discussed will come up on next week's episode. But until then, our sound producer is Jonathan. Make that Christmas money, Cerna.
Well, I got to make that Christmas money because I am going to be going to see Star Wars like 50 times. And since I actually like the movie theater I'm going to be buying popcorn and a soda every single time. Because that's the magic of movies, folks. If you like your movie theater, buy concessions.
And that's how you make that Schwimmer money. Our voice actor, our sound producer, almost there. Our announcer is the inimitable voice actor, Bob Ball, who's better with his words than I am. You can follow him at Bob Ball VO. Our theme music is done by Linnea Boyev. And on behalf of Lauren Urban, Jonathan Cerna, and the entire Glib Shark staff, this is Jack Edithel saying good night, good health, and hey, thanks, Mark, for coming on.
Anytime.
Mixed it up that time. All right, fellas, I will bid you all adieu. Thanks for coming on, Mark. Sorry I was late.
Oh, hey, it was good to at least get you for part of it.
Yeah, I was there for a decent chunk. Jonathan, always a conversation.
Indeed.
Take it easy, fella.
See ya. I can't believe we spent half of that show talking about Destiny.
I'm not that surprised, actually. It's, of all the games I've played, it's the most chat-about-able game since Halo, and I think Bungie has a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and, it's such a social game. It's a game where I'm really glad that you found a group and that your group is growing and that you're finding other friends, because honestly, I would not have enjoyed and I wouldn't have put as many hours into the game if it wasn't for my friends.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is I often am not able to play when I can be on mic anyway, because, Crystal's asleep or kids are asleep, or I will admit that I often play Destiny while on the elliptical, especially for grindy stuff.
Oh, okay. So how is that working out for you?
Quite well, actually. In fact, I found
working
that,
out.
It particularly during Iron Banner, I would get so into it that I would completely lose track of how fast I was going. I looked down at my heart rate monitor. And it's like, you're in the top zone, and it's like, oh, that's why I'm breathing so hard, because I was just so focused on trying to get kills in Iron Banner that it's like I was not paying attention to speed, difficulty, anything else.
So I've been doing a thing where I've been playing Hearthstone on a treadmill, and I have found that at least for the treadmill, I actually made because I was texting someone while I was on the treadmill right before I'd started a game, and I was like, also texting on the treadmill is hard. This should be an Olympic event, because it really should be. And I don't know that I could play something twitchy, especially against other people, while exercising. So kudos to you for getting that done, apparently.
Well, I've actually played Hearthstone on the iPad on the or on the elliptical and found that to be harder.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think it maybe had something to do with the iPad screen size, that it was difficult to manage, because before Destiny and before I tried Hearthstone, I played Brave Frontier on my phone a bunch on the elliptical. And that I could hold in one hand, tap with the other hand, no problem. It was trying to manage either resting the iPad up there or doing it. I would just miss stuff, and it didn't turn out well. And granted, I wouldn't try and do a Nightfall or something while on the elliptical, but running around doing some Crucible, running around.
I call it the Bernie Burns method for weight loss. I give him credit every time I talk about it.
Yeah, I assume you'll be watching him on The Amazing Race here in the spring.
I am super excited for that. Amazing Race was already probably my favorite reality show. If you had to, and it's more of a game show than a really reality show, and that's fine. But it's definitely the top. If you were to say, hey, would you rather be on Big Brother or Amazing Race? Amazing Race every single time. But when he got announced for it, I'm super excited for them. I really hope they do well. Even if they don't, I think it's still the parts they're in will be entertaining. But I think it'll be funny, because for the sake of the show, they better be in it for most of it. Because I think by far of all the couples that I was aware of on this season, they were by far going to be the ones to bring in the most viewers.
Oh yeah, I mean some of the other YouTube folks supposedly have big followings, but I think part of it too is, Bernie by himself is sort of a comedy powerhouse, and I can only imagine that, presuming they give him a decent edit, he should have a pretty good following, even of the traditional Amazing Race fans.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one thing that a lot of people who are really excited for Bernie to be on a show like that, I don't know how much the Rooster Teeth / YouTube fandom coincides with the Amazing Race fandom, or just reality shows in general. But you're right, that is absolutely so important for characters on the show and how they're performed. Do the editors like you or not? Because if on Big Brother and such, if the editors hate you, or on Real World, if the production just thinks you're a dick, they will portray you as a dick. And they have enough material on you to make you seem however they want in the terms of the narrative.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he's actually worked with real production teams, as opposed to some of these other YouTube folks who likely haven't ever worked with anyone in serious production, may give him an edge because he may know how to sort of stay on their good side.
Right. And I would imagine, well, I don't know, because I mean, I've never been around, well, at least I don't know if I've been around Bernie when he's on. Most of the time when I hang out with Burns, it's just, hey, I'm just hanging out with Burns. So I don't know if he's going to be like how different he is. I don't imagine that he's too much different, but if he's able to keep up and stay on that amount of time, then yeah, you're absolutely right. He'll get on their good side because he is such an approachable and likable guy, and they'll give him an edit. And I'm gonna get off his junk right now because I'm just all up in it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. My mom is one who's watched every season of Amazing Race. I ended up kind of falling off watching it the past couple of years just because, it's kind of like how many times can you see somebody run through the same city in India or whatever?
Yeah, same.
Given up on a number of the different reality shows for that kind of reason. But, I mentioned it to her, and she was super excited. She actually did watch a couple of the early seasons of Red versus Blue back when it was more of a comedy as opposed to a more quasi-serious thing.
Yeah.
And so she was like, oh, yeah, I remember that guy.
Well, that's cool. Time. Yeah. And I, to answer your question, yes, I am looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it a lot, actually. They just recently got back a few days ago, I think.
Yeah, he did. I saw him post because they get sequestered through the whole month that they're filming. That he was back, and it was weird having a phone again. Because of course
I can't imagine how. Not even just them, but let's say you and I were a team, and so we were sequestered for a month away from our social media and our phones, and we are not you and I are not nearly on that level. But when you start putting it into that context, it's like, could you do that? It's like not even eating the worms or the physical activity or the stress or anything like that. Could you just be away from your phone for that long?
Yeah. And I mean, not just be away from your phone generally, but be away from your phone from everybody. No family, no friends, no nothing.
There's an enormous amount of trust from your loved ones that if something happened, that the production would actually contact you to say, hey, so something happened and they're coming home or something like that.
Yeah.
Or whatnot. I know a few people who would not, if I were to go do something like that, not the least of which is my wife, that might be one of the reasons why she said, no, you can't, because she would not want to, it's bad enough when I go off to PAX and stuff for a week or something like that. To be away for an entire month with absolutely no contact, I don't think she would go for that at all.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably wrap up. So we got 20 minutes more.
Yeah, we did.
Wow, we're good at this. We should do this more.
It could be like a regular thing, I guess.
Well, so like I said, it's our show is more conversational based rather than interview based now. So you coming on and just hanging out is definitely something that you could do. If you're interested in coming back, just let me know.
I may have to do that since I have this fancy new microphone,
which you sound fantastic on. So that's great.
Yeah, I picked it up because my older son wants to do some YouTube stuff. So I was like, well, gotta have a decent USB mic to get all that done. And the Blue Yeti happened to be on sale on Tiger Direct as a daily deal one day. So
I think I know a few people who picked that up, and it is definitely a step up from using a Rock Band mic or a USB headset or something like that. It's definitely an inexpensive step in the right direction.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to go and let you go. I'm probably going to get in a race or two here. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you need to come visit sometime.
I will. I know. I need to go or down there. All right. I'll see you
later.